A pregnant woman named Anne is rushed into the hospital after being struck by lightning, which causes her to go into labor. After hours pass, the doctor informs her husband Greg that Anne has died during childbirth. The doctor also informs Greg that the baby is healthy, but may have some abnormalities, including albinism. Despite this, Greg insists on seeing his son and is taken to the room where the baby is being kept in an incubator. The baby is connected to a machine measuring brain waves. Greg is overwhelmed with emotion and refuses to accept the baby due to its appearance, causing the baby to become distressed and cry. The baby's brainwave readings spike as Greg is led out of the room. Sheriff Barnum brings Jesse Caldwell, the head of the local youth shelter, to an old farmhouse where an old man has recently died. He points out a broken cup in the living room, explaining that the man had a heart attack the previous night and was found by the neighbors. He then leads her to the basement, where he tells her that there is a boy hiding there who refuses to come out, and he didn't know who else to call. Jesse says that the neighbors claim the boy is deformed, and that over the years, no one has actually gotten a good look at him, leading the sheriff to believe that the boy is the old man's grandson, who is hidden away in the basement to avoid the public seeing him. Jesse and the sheriff cautiously enter the basement and find the boy hiding in the corner, in the dark. Jesse approaches him, and as he steps into the light, they are startled by his pale, hairless skin and purple eyes. They ask for his name, and he tells them that his grandparents called him Powder, but his real name is Jeremy Reed. Sheriff Barnum leaves to get food for Jesse and Jeremy, and while he is gone, she speaks with Jeremy. She asks him why he did not call for help when his grandfather collapsed, and he explains that his granddad always told him that if anyone saw him, they would try to take him away. Jeremy reveals that he has never been to school, but has read all the books in the basement. Jesse pulls out a difficult book for college students and asks Jeremy to read a random page. He does so flawlessly and tells her he can do the same with any other book. Later, as Jesse drives off with Jeremy, all the police sirens and radios malfunction. The sheriff notices a dozen lightning rods on the roof of the house. Officer Harley Duncan expresses suspicion of Jeremy as the doctor reported that the old man died of a heart attack but had also been electrocuted. When Jeremy steps out of the car, the other children stare at him in awe. Jesse calls the chairman and arranges for Jeremy to take an IQ test. At lunchtime, Jeremy sits alone at a table and a group of teens decide to come over and bully him. As a tradition, John tells Jeremy that on the first day at the shelter, the new arrival has to wear a spoon. He then asks his friend Mitch to demonstrate by balancing a spoon on his nose while everyone else laughs at the absurdity of it. Jeremy then takes the spoon from John and he begins to control it, making it stand on the table and attracting all the other spoons to form a tower at the center of the table. Everyone is frightened, but John is angry and sees Jeremy as some kind of bizarre creature. Later, when Barnum returns home after his shift, he finds his son Stephen at the doorstep and shows no interest in him as he goes to check on his terminally ill wife who is dying of cancer and can no longer speak or open her eyes. The next day, after the doctor confirms that Jeremy is in perfect health, Jesse asks him if he would like to attend school. The following week at school, science teacher Mr. Donald Ripley is teaching his students about electric current. To demonstrate how electricity travels, he turns off the lights and turns on a Jacob's ladder machine. As he's speaking, Jeremy becomes visibly uneasy, trembling and clutching his desk. The machine emits more and more sparks at a higher intensity, and a bolt of electricity shoots from one of the electrodes into Jeremy's chest. Jeremy is lifted out of his chair and suspended in the air as the electricity runs through him. Unable to unplug the machine, Mr. Ripley breaks it with a chair, causing Jeremy to fall to the ground. As the students rush out of the classroom, Mr. Ripley approaches an unconscious Jeremy, and as he touches him on the shoulder, all the hairs on his arms stand up. He carries Jeremy into a sort of subconscious state at the hospital. Dr. Wayne is skeptical of Mr. Ripley's description of the event, as such an electrical shock would typically kill or at least severely burn someone, yet Jeremy is completely fine. Ripley discovers that Jeremy's body is undergoing electrolysis, which is the reason for his hairless condition. However, before they can discuss this further, they learn that Jeremy has escaped from the hospital. On his way back to his grandfather's house, Jeremy meets Lindsay, a classmate who witnessed the incident. Despite her skepticism, Jeremy tells her that he can hear people's thoughts and memories, including things they aren't aware of themselves. As they continue their conversation, Jeremy becomes aware that some of the neighbors are staring at him. Eventually, they part ways, and Jeremy continues his journey. On the interstate bridge, Sheriff Barnum and Officer Duncan intercept him and force him to return with them. When asked why he doesn't like hospitals, Jeremy reveals that the worst day of his life took place in the day he was born. Back at school, Jeremy is called into the conference room to discuss his IQ test results. The chairman, Dr. Stibler, tells him that his IQ is off the charts and there isn't even a classification for someone as intelligent as him. Jeremy expresses his desire to return to his grandfather's house, but is told that it has been foreclosed on by the bank. The next day, Barnum takes the kids at the youth shelter camping in the woods. Jeremy sits alone, away from the group. During a thunderstorm, Jeremy expresses his fear and confusion to Barnum, who doesn't believe in God. The next morning, Jeremy wanders deeper into the woods, and as he places his hands on the ground, all the geckos are drawn to him. However, as he picks one up, the others scatter in fear. Suddenly, John and Mitch, who had been observing him, reveal themselves, and John raises a gun, aiming it at Jeremy and threatening to kill him. At that moment, a gunshot sounds in the distance. As Jeremy and his group come across a dying deer that had been shot in the heart, Officer Duncan boasts about his hunting skills. Jeremy becomes emotional as he feels the pain and fear of the dying animal. In its final moments, he places one hand on the deer's neck and grabs Duncan's wrist with the other, transferring the animal's pain and fear into the officer. As the deer convulses, Duncan's pain intensifies. John threatens to shoot Jeremy, however, Mitch intervenes, lifting the gun and saving Jeremy's life. Later, at the county hospital, Jesse asks Jeremy about what happened. He tells her that he just wants to go home and accuses her of taking him away from home and locking him up. This causes Jeremy to become angry and causes the lights and glass in the room to shatter. He storms out of the room, leaving Jesse in shock. Later that night, Barnum returns home to find out that his wife is in severe pain and is unable to communicate. The doctor tells Barnum that he will never know why she chooses to hold on, but there must be a reason for her refusal to pass away. In the youth center's lunchroom, Mr. Ripley approaches Jeremy and explains that when he touched him while he was unconscious on the classroom floor, he felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever experienced before. He believes that Jeremy has unlocked 100% of his brain's capacity and is surrounded by this energy. Mr. Ripley wants to be Jeremy's friend so that he can learn as much as possible from him. The next day, Barnum visits Duncan and notices that he has gotten rid of all of his guns, something that is unusual for him as he loves hunting. Duncan tells Barnum that since he transferred the pain of the dying deer into him, he has been so traumatized that he can no longer hold a gun. Later that night, Barnum takes Jeremy to his house and asks him to communicate with his wife to find out what he needs to do for her to move on. Jeremy touches her forehead and hears her speak in her mind. She tells Barnum that she can't go yet, not until he forgives and accepts Stephen. Barnum remains stubborn, but she reminds him of when Stephen was a child and all three of them played in the snow together. Barnum and Stephen searched for hours after she lost her wedding ring while playing. Barnum remembers Stephen coming home from school every day to search through the snow for the ring. Jeremy tells Barnum that she wants him to open the silver box that Stephen had brought a few days ago, and inside he finds the ring. Jeremy explains that Stephen had found it while renovating the garden at their old house. After Barnum puts the ring on his wife's finger, Jeremy touches Barnum's wrist and he begins to hear his wife's voice in his mind. He tells her that everything will be okay, and as he hugs her, she opens her eyes one last time before passing away. Stephen rushes over and Barnum embraces him as they both cry. A few days later, Jeremy goes on a date with Lindsay at the county fair. Jeremy asks her if she thinks he is ugly, like his father did, but she tells him he has the most beautiful face she's ever seen and kisses him. Lindsay's father sees this and attacks Jeremy, calling him names and referring to him as a thing rather than a person. Jeremy is heartbroken and packs his things to return to his granddad's home, where he feels accepted. As he leaves the youth shelter, he hears commotion from the gym and enters to find the other teens playing basketball. John and his friends confront Jeremy and take his hat. John challenges Jeremy to fight for it, saying the same thing his stepfather said to him when he took the hat. That was the last thing John's father left him before he died. Jeremy then sees into John's memories and recalls the traumatic event when his stepfather took the hat and beat him. John becomes emotional and physically abuses Jeremy, stripping him naked and throwing him into a mud puddle. In a fit of anger and sadness, Jeremy unleashes a burst of energy that causes everyone, including himself, to be knocked unconscious. When John wakes up, he realizes that his heart has stopped, and Jeremy revives him with electric shocks. Mitch offers to help Jeremy escape and return to his grandfather's house, but when they arrive, all of Jeremy's belongings have been removed. Jesse promises to find him a new place to call home, and Barnum, who has come to arrest Jeremy, agrees to let him go. Jeremy tells Barnum that when his wife died, he felt her go somewhere, bringing a smile to Barnum's face. Jeremy runs into the field, with the group following closely behind. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning strikes Jeremy in the chest, and he absorbs the energy. As the energy builds inside him, Jeremy emits a powerful blast of vibrant energy that radiates throughout the field. In that moment, Jeremy disappears and the clouds come together again. As they all look up at the sky, Barnum begins to cry as he develops faith in the afterlife. He realizes that his wife did not just die, but that she lives on somewhere up above, watching over him and waiting for him. Have you ever been bullied as Jeremy? Have you ever wished to have some superpower so you can defend yourself? Let us know that in a comment. Thank you for watching.